On today's show, Amelia Boone returns to racing, Rhee of the NE Spahtens Podcast, Trevor Cichosz, World's Toughest Mudder champion and winner of Toughest Mudder Philly, and Nolan and Eli of TMHQ.
This is the World's Toughest Podcast. Welcome to the World's Toughest Podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's World's Toughest Mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the World's Toughest Podcast.
Toughest Mudder Philly was great a couple weeks ago. I didn't say it last week, but congratulations to everyone who ran in Philly. Well done. Give yourselves a pat on the back. We got a huge response to last week's episode. If that was your first episode, then welcome. Glad to have you along. You should leave a review on iTunes and introduce yourself. While we were focused on Toughest Mudder Philly, there were a lot of regular Tough Mudders going on all around us. Listen to the schedule. Last weekend, while North America had Toughest Philly, 2 other continents were hosting a Tough Mudder. There was a Tough Mudder in Midlands, UK, and Southeast Queensland, Australia. That's along with Toughest Mudder Philly, Tough Mudder Philly, and Tough Mudder Half in Philly. And that was 2 weekends ago. This past weekend had Tough Mudder in Kentucky and Michigan. And this upcoming weekend has Tough Mudder in Virginia and Sacramento. Busy time of the year for TMHQ. Did you run any of those Tough Mudders? What is your next Tough Mudder? How many laps are you going to do? Shoot me an email at willhicks@gmail.com. Let me know. I saw a video on Mud Run Guide by some guys called The Mud Movement. They were at the Spahtens Super in Austin, Texas a couple weeks ago. If I was listening to this podcast, I'd have 3 questions right now. Why are we talking about a random Spartan race? Did he say the Mud Movement? And is that a poop joke? I don't think it's a poop joke, but you'd have to ask them. As for why I'm talking about a random Spartan race, it's because finishing in second place for the women was Amelia Boone. Amelia is the only male or female athlete to win World's Toughest Mudder 3 times in the solo category. She's the highest profile OCR athlete, male or female, by far. She had a national TV commercial for Alberto beef jerky.
Amelia, quit messing with the electricity.
Sorry, little voice in my stomach. It's not me. It's this obstacle.
Then we need some all-natural Alberta beef jerky. It's protein without all of the sugar, a lot of protein bars.
Delicious.
She's had high-profile commentary jobs with ESPN for Battle Frog. She was on TV for SNY in New York for Civilian Military Combine. And she was behind the desk for Spartan's live coverage of the Seattle NBC race a few weeks ago. Tim Ferriss featured her as the very first chapter in his new book, Tools for Titans. She's probably the most important woman in OCR today, and that's without even racing competitively in over a year, because she's been hurt. It's a long story. You should hear it in her words, though, not mine. Go to AmeliaBooneRacing.com, go to her blog, and scroll down to the entry from February 9th. Read that one first, and then work your way back to today. It'll take you a while, but it's worth it if you don't know the whole story about her injury and coming back. So Amelia ran the Spahtens Super in Austin. She got second place, and the Mud Movement talked to her afterwards.
You had kind of an emotional moment.
It's being back out on the course for the first time since Tahoe 2015. And it's been a year and a half. And, you know, I had no idea what to expect out there. And I'm obviously very rusty, but I don't care. I've crossed that finish line. And, like, I haven't had that joy for such a long time. It is a blessing and a curse to have, you know, people know and people talk. But the thing is that I place so much higher expectations on myself than anyone else places on me. So, like, I'm my own hardest critic. And I've just been really trying to, like, set my ego aside and be like, we're starting over, we'll get there, you know, we're working on it. You got things to improve.
Thanks for the audio to the Mud Movement. I'm still hoping to see Amelia at a Toughest Mudder this year, either in Whistler or in Chicago. She used to live in Chicago, so there's that. Who knows? Either way, it was good to see her back out there again. So everyone is happy for you, Amelia. Well done. Congratulations. Speaking of Whistler and Chicago, they are your last 2 chances to run a Toughest Mudder this year. Whistler is June 17th, and Chicago is August 26th. Tickets are still available, but they will not be forever, so you should sign up. Before we get to this week's interviews, let's read some iTunes reviews. Do you remember a couple weeks ago when I read a review from Mike Stefano? He has his own podcast, and he was telling his female co-host, Caitlin, about our podcast. Remember this? Well, I read his review on our podcast that he played that audio of me reading his review on his podcast. And now I'm going to play that audio on my podcast. This is Inception-level podcasting. Just listen, it'll make sense. Mike Stefano playing our podcast for his female co-host, Caitlin.
Oh, that's awesome.
For the kind words.
Mike and Caitlin, thank you for those kind words.
Oh, he didn't forget about you, Caitlin.
Take any credit for that.
Oh, gosh.
You guys should check out his podcast. It's a mix of road running and OCR content. Mike says some nice things about our little old show.
I'm scared.
His female co-host, Caitlin, seems less impressed.
What did I say?
Our show. And she goes, wait, it's just about Tough Mudder? And I goes, yeah. And she says, oh, well, okay. But that's all right, though, as I am used to disappointing the ladies.
I'm so embarrassed.
What do you have to say to Will Hicks, Caitlin?
Will Hicks, I am so sorry. It's just, I'm so embarrassed. It's just, I've never run a Tough Mudder before, and I don't ever plan on doing World's Toughest, so I didn't think that I could relate much to your podcast. However, I will give it a listen, and hopefully I won't be disappointing you.
Go check out his show. They're young, they're hip, they like to run. Mike Stefano running. Now, on to our reviews. My weekly treat, 5 stars, by Bubbles the Clown. I've been listening since the beginning, just a few months ago. I love OCR, and although I started out doing a ton, over 10 Tough Mudders, I drifted away to the other competitive races. Each year in mid-November, I'd rediscover why I love Tough Mudder at World's Toughest Mudder. This year, with the Toughest series and this awesome podcast, I've been able to jump back in and compete without waiting a whole year. Will has done an amazing job covering this season, and I attribute so much of my readiness in Philly to the interviews and his insight on the previous 3 Toughests. I hadn't left a review to this point because I have an Android phone and been listening through the Stitcher app, but I borrowed a friend's iTunes to throw this in here to help support the cause. Keep it going, Will, and Tough Mudder community. Thank you, Bubbles the Clown. That's Kevin Gregory from the Tough Mudder community. He wears a terrifying mask when he runs World's Toughest Mudder. No, I don't get it either. Next review. Making the Long Run Fly By, 5 stars, by WTM Dirty Bird. Will has the best interviews. I could listen to his podcast for hours, and sometimes do. I put it on at the start of my long run and listened to it a couple times. Will, I'll need a really long interview the first week of November, please. Thank you, WTM Dirty Bird, for those kind words. The Dirty Birds were, or I guess are, a small group of WTM runners that I haven't heard from lately. Or maybe I've just missed you. Good to know you're still around. I've got plans for November, but I am open to suggestions. Shoot me an email at willhicks@gmail.com. If you would like to leave a review for the show on iTunes, go to iTunes and find our podcast, World's Toughest Podcast. Click on ratings and reviews, and then click Write Review. It'll take you literally 20 seconds. Unless, computers aren't your thing. Leave a review, and I may read it on the air. I'll probably read it on the air. I like to read them on the air. 5 stars. Last thing before we get to our interviews, I have an update on Ian Panter. It's good news. Ian was leaving Tough Mudder, Michigan last week and was in a car accident. This was written by his sister. We have progress. Yesterday, Ian gave bilateral thumbs up on command and opened his eyes for a second, unfocused. We didn't say anything because we wanted to see a pattern. Nothing happened after 8 a.m. yesterday, but then this morning he was taken off of the vent, maybe temporary, only been an hour, and he followed commands again for a minute. He's back to sleepy, Ian, but I got a hand squeeze when I asked. Unfortunately, with the brain, we don't know if this is constant progress or if he will regress, so please continue to send prayers, good energy, and love his way. That's good news for Ian. If you would like to help Ian with his medical expenses, the family has set up a GoFundMe. You can find a link to it by Googling Ian Panter GoFundMe, or there's a link on the World's Toughest Podcast Facebook page. On today's show, 3 interviews that are totally unique to each other. First, Sandy Rhee of the NE Spahtens Podcast and I sat down for a few minutes to talk about Toughest Mudder Philly. The NE Spahtens, that's how they say it, Spahtens Podcast, is one of the few OCR podcasts that I listen to almost every new episode of. It's generally pretty light on Tough Mudder info, but it's got a good range of general OCR news, and it helps me keep a handle on what else is going on in the industry as a whole. Sandy has a great point of view on the race from the non-elite side of things. And then we talked to Trevor Cichosz. Trevor is tied with Ryan Atkins and John Albin for most miles at a single WTM ever with 105. Trevor is one of 7 men to own the coveted World's Toughest Mudder 100-miler orange jacket, and he was also the winner of Toughest Mudder Philly this past weekend. And finally, we talk with Nolan Kombol and Eli Hutchison of TMHQ again to get their thoughts on the Toughest Mudder season so far, and then I see if I can get them to share some World's Toughest Mudder 2017 secrets. Spoiler alert, they don't share any secrets. Let's go to the phones.
Sandy, Rhee, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I've only listened to the New England Spahtens podcast for a few months, but it seems like you're the biggest Tough Mudder fan of the three of you. Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. Josh has only done one, and that was at my insistence. He'll be doing his second one this year. And honestly, I'm not sure if Paul has done any or if he did one and then just doesn't. But he's not a fan of jumping into water, so that's what keeps him away.
What do you think about the whole concept of Toughest Mudder, the 8-hour introduction to World's Toughest?
I absolutely love it. And I think Tough Mudder is doing a fantastic job of having something for everybody, whether it be the half, whether it be the full, whether it be toughest or tougher, and then, of course, World's Toughest. I like the variety that they offer, and I also am very appreciative of the chance to go out and learn some lessons prior to trying it for 24 hours.
You're going to Vegas this winter, this November, aren't you?
I am. It's going to be my first try.
What did you learn in Philly that you're going to take to Vegas with you?
The biggest thing is I actually need a full wetsuit because I don't handle cold well. So the little shorty that I had did me fine for what I needed it to do, but not well enough for real purposes. Learned to bring a windbreaker and a hat and a couple other things, and basically how to pace.
Tell me about Toughest Mudder Philly. What did you think of the whole course?
I thought it was really fun. I may have made a big mistake by going out and doing the regular Saturday morning, but I kind of wanted to see what the course was like, and I originally was just going to walk the whole thing and didn't. Did kind of a mix of walk and jog and whatnot, and I had a really good time. It gave me an idea. Up until that day, I was under the impression that it was going to be like the other events where it was one 5-mile loop for half the night and a different 5-mile loop. And that probably came from me not seeing that somewhere. So that was a little bit of a surprise. And I was glad I had done the whole course for an idea. And it was kind of cool going through the regular course and seeing, so that's where they're going to mark the course for later, because you could see where the ribbons just needed to be turned 90 degrees or reconnected or disconnected in certain places. So that was kind of cool, and getting a bird's eye view of what it was going to be. But the course itself was awesome. And starting at midnight with that many people was incredibly cool.
There were 700 plus people in your one start wave there in Philly.
Yeah, I think it was close to 800. I want to say it was 757 names on the T-shirt, and that didn't include anybody who had signed up in the last 2 weeks.
What did you think of the obstacles for Toughest Mudder?
Operation was definitely different. Most of them were either the same or just slight variations, and thankfully I've done a bunch of Tough Mudders, and so therefore there weren't any huge surprises. And quite honestly, that late at night and at my ability level, there were some where even with the alterations that were made, it was like, yeah, I can't do the regular one, let alone the alterations. So it didn't make any difference to me. But Operation was definitely different. And so I got a kick out of that one, almost literally.
I heard you talking about that on your podcast. It didn't shock you so much as you said it felt like a water balloon?
Yeah, it kind of felt like getting hit in the chest with a water balloon, and it just kind of exploded and just expanded out across my chest and then disappeared.
That's when I do it, it feels like my elbows are about to blow off.
Okay, and apparently just different people react to it different ways, because I never felt any real pain or real kind of shock, but then that was always the case. Everybody always talked about electric eel, but I never felt anything with electric eel other than a muscle twitch, so that one never freaked me out. Oh, I was going to say, which in a funny story, back years ago when my mother came to watch one, she was very disappointed in me that I didn't yell and scream and curse like all the other people she had been watching do it. And she admitted to me that she was disappointed.
It's funny. My dad used to be an electrician, and so when he would a Tough Mudder with me, he refused to do anything electrical. He's like, I worked with it. I know how powerful it is. No, not going to happen. Yep,
I don't blame him a bit. And I do have to say that they introduced the Legionnaire program when I was already on number 10. So I had already done 10 electroshock therapies, and I had done electric eel, and then I did one. They had it only once in Vegas. It was a nighttime one, Thunder something or other, where they played AC/DC's Thunderstruck at very loud volumes and had a completely blacked out crawl, and there were live electric wires in that. So I've done all of those. So I'm not the slightest bit embarrassed to admit that ever since the Legionnaire program came on, I gladly just walked on by.
Yeah, I don't like being shocked. What did you think of the course? How'd the weather affect you?
I don't deal well with the cold in general. My body doesn't like cold, and especially my hands and my feet. So the cold did affect me. It didn't affect me as much as I expected it to. Of course, it was about 10 degrees colder than what they had predicted, because I had been anxiously watching the weather as the date approached. So it did affect me some. But again, I did notice in listening to a bunch of the podcasts that you have a tendency to interview people who are strong contenders, very much leaders on the course, very strong, very capable, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm not helpless, but there's a lot of things that I'm not successful at, even when it's an 80-degree day. And I'm okay with that. That's just where I am. And so it didn't affect me as much as it might have if I had been very competitive, and therefore the loss of grip strength and such had really bothered me. But given my level, it didn't make any real difference after all. And the course was cool. Rolling hills, of course, not anything too strenuous, not anything very long, that's for sure. But I'm a lousy hill climber, so I always slow way down on the hills. I'm never a fan of them, but I understand their part in it. And so it went fine, but I thought their layout was great. I was listening to the recap, and they said that, yeah, Funky Monkey was right after Arctic Enema, and I was like, really? Didn't even notice that.
You say you're not an elite contender, but you still had a good time out there. What would you say to other people that it might be intimidated by going for 8 hours?
I would say that if it's something that interests you, you should absolutely do it. You do not have to be a contender. You do not have to be aiming for 25 or 30 or 50 miles. You do not have to be anything to go and have a great experience, to get to witness other people who can do those things, go by you and do some amazing things, and get a chance to help them every once in a while. Don't let any of that stop you, because that's what stopped me the first year at World's Toughest. Because I thought, that might be kind of fun. I wouldn't mind doing it. And I stopped myself. I said, no, I can't compete. I can't do anything with that. That would be silly to go. And so I never did, which is just silly. Go out and experience life. Do what you want to do. And don't worry if you're only going to get 2 or 3 laps or 4 or 5 laps or whatever your case may be. These are doable for anybody. You're not going to win. But as long as you understand that, go out and have a good time and experience it.
What was your darkest moment out there?
I'm thankful to say that I didn't really have a dark moment, other than the fact that towards the end of my second lap, I only made 2 laps, so 10 miles for me. But right near the end, I realized that something was wrong with my left foot. And it had been bothering me, but it was getting worse and worse. And so if you could call anything a dark moment, it was that. And that was more along the lines of, what if something's seriously wrong? I still have Worlds and World's Toughest coming up later in the season, and I don't want anything to affect that, than it was, oh man, I'm not going to get a third or a fourth lap. So all in all, it was a very positive experience for me.
What's your best story from Toughest Mudder Philly?
Best story. Well, listening to your recap when you were talking about Arnell doing his video and seeing all of the headlamps going out in front of you in this huge long line right at the very beginning, I thought that was incredible. And I actually did stop for a minute right on the side of the course so that I didn't get in anybody's way and just watched just the sheer spectacle, of 750 or so odd runners all in one big group just stretching out. That was very cool. And the second lap mud mile, got there was one other girl, and she and I were running together, and we were having a great time, but it's difficult to get to do mud mile, especially when they build it so tall and so steep. And there were a couple of guys there who just immediately, no questions asked. They were obviously much stronger runners than we were. They were already on their third lap, which was really cool. But they stayed and they waited and they helped us, and that was just really very cool.
Sandy Rhee, anything else you want to talk about from Toughest Mudder Philly?
No, just to reiterate, do it. You absolutely should do it because it is more fun than you can possibly imagine. Even though it sounds miserable, it's not. It's fantastic. And
we're going to see you at World's Toughest Mudder in November.
I absolutely will be there.
Awesome. Sandy Rhee, thanks much.
Thank you.
Trevor Cichosz, you just won first place at Toughest Mudder Philly. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What did you think? What do you think of the whole Toughest Mudder concept?
I love it. I've been waiting for a race series like this for a long time. They pretty much took Ultra Beast out of the market, you know? That's
interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Instead of 2 giant laps, the Ultra Beast is 2 13-mile laps, right?
Yeah.
So it's about 8 hours. I've never run an Ultra Beast.
Yeah, I did one Ultra Beast in Vermont, the Killington one. That took me about 9 hours. That was tough. But yeah, I mean, before Toughest Mudder, the Ultra Endurance OCRs, there wasn't much to choose from. There was the Battle Frog 8-hour, which is gone now, and they didn't pay any money. And then there's the Ultra Beast, and they pay the winner like $500. It's like not even worth your time. So
you didn't run Toughest LA because of a foot injury, and then you finished.
That's correct.
You finished in 6th place in Atlanta, just short of elite contender status. Was your foot still bothering you in Atlanta?
No, it was my stomach. After the first lap, I had to pull off course to go to the bathroom, and then I think I had to do it 2 more times that lap during the second lap. So I think 3 bathroom breaks during the second lap, and then another one during the third. So I was just, and then I felt like crap for the next couple hours. So it was pretty bad.
How did you feel going into Philly?
A lot better. I dialed in my nutrition pre-race, which I think is what got me. I ate way too much before the Atlanta race. Like we went to the Waffle House, I think around 1800, 6 hours before the race, and I ate a lot of food. And then that kind of just stayed in me and then dropped into my stomach as soon as I started running and just screwed me up. So going into Philadelphia, I just snacked all day. Like I pretended I was racing where I never ate any meals. I kind of just took a bite of food here and there.
Is that kind of the secret to not having the stomach troubles later? Just small mouthfuls at a time?
Yeah, just small digestible meals. Jason Rulo wrote an article about it, I think on Obstacle Racing Media, and I followed his advice to the T, and it worked.
How do you approach a race like Toughest when you're planning? Do you think I want to get this many miles, or do you think I want first place, I want top 3?
I think about miles, and I let the positioning just sort itself out. Same thing I do in World's Toughest Mudder. I was going for 45 miles in Philadelphia because I wanted to do better than I did in Atlanta, which was 40 miles. So 45 was my goal, and I was pretty close to making it. I think I was like 42 and a half miles, and then I on the 9th lap, I didn't have anyone chasing me. I'd already won the race, and I was hurting pretty bad because I pushed really hard on the 8th lap, so I kind of just was like, screw it, and I called it a day.
How was the start of the race for you in Philly?
It was good. I started a little faster than usual because I wanted to get ahead and get ahead of pace. I knew I'd slow down later on. And also I want to take advantage of the hour and a half of limited obstacles.
When did you take the lead?
I did not take the lead until about halfway through my 8th lap. So about 2.5 miles before the finish.
Tell me about passing the guy in second place. Or the guy who wasn't.
It was crazy. When I was finishing my 7th lap, getting ready for my 8th, I heard his name go over the speakers that he was starting his lap. So I got through Kong as fast as I could and ran into the pits, or ran through the finish line and immediately turned around and went straight out the start and had him in sight, and just did my best to chase him down and keep him in sight. He's a faster runner than me. He's an ultramarathon runner. He's great. But every time we got to an obstacle, I'd catch up to him, and then he'd pull away on the running again. And he failed, or he got stuck on Everest, and I passed Everest and pulled ahead of him there. And he was gaining on me again, and we got to King of Swingers, and he failed that, and that's pretty much when I had the race.
He told me that, Jordan McDougall we're talking about, he told me that on Everest you got up and then you helped him up behind you.
Yeah, so I pulled myself up and then helped him get up.
When did you know you had it won?
Pretty much when I was walking/running my 9th lap, and Chris Mendoza came out on course to tell me that Jordan hadn't started another lap and I won. So, I mean, I don't call anything in the books until it's in the books. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to keep going.
How did it feel on the podium getting that giant check?
It was awesome. I mean, I didn't think I was going to win one of these races this year with Brian Atkins' dominating performances so far. So him bailing on it last minute was very advantageous for me.
Are you going to be at Whistler or Chicago?
I'll be at Whistler, and that's my last one. I'm going to be gone for Chicago.
I want to ask you about World's Toughest real quick. In 2014, you finished in 3rd, and then 2015, you finished in 2nd. In 2016, you finally got 1st place. How did it feel to break through?
That was the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. I mean, that was a long work in progress. I mean, the actual objective was to get 100 miles. I mean, that took me 4 years to get. But then actually pull off 100 miles and win the race in the same year was beyond what I wanted, and it was crazy. I was really happy. I'm still on a high from it.
How did it feel to have the whole thing documented on TV?
Even better. To actually win the race on their first year, debuting on CBS Sports, was pretty cool.
One of the best parts of the whole TV show was when Austin was passing you, and you guys kind of gave each other a fist bump. What happened right then?
Oh, we were friends. We knew each other before the race, and if I wasn't going to win, it'd be Austin. I mean, I'd be happy with that. He's a cool guy. He deserves it. He works really hard. He doesn't come from a running background like I do. We're both kind of born into this, starting from scratch. So it's really cool to see him doing so well.
What are your plans for World's Toughest this year?
As of right now, to run solo and go for that 110 50K.
Tough Mudder headquarters moved all the big money from the team division back into the solo division. And there's a chance that all 7 guys who got 100 miles last year could be racing against each other. What would that be like?
It's going to be awesome. This will be the first year where whoever wins the individual actually beat every single person to win the individual. So it's the year to win. It's the year to be there. It's perfect. Like I said, I mean, Atkins sat out the individual last 2 years, so it hasn't been a complete race yet. So we'll see if anyone can beat Atkins at the individual category.
Eli and Nolan, thanks for taking the time.
Happy to.
We are currently 4 races into the 6-race Toughest Mudder series for the year. How do you feel about Toughest Mudder so far?
Feeling pretty good about it. I think for a new event format and coming off what we've done for the past 6 years at World's Toughest, it's really exciting to see a new group of participants take it on. I think it's changed the way that people are approaching not just Toughest Mudder, but also the sport. we're seeing a lot more calendar planning and scheduling for not just the elite athletes, but a lot of people who are just out there to earn miles and are approaching it in a much different way. So it's been really successful. I think, mechanically and operationally on site, we're still learning things. It's run a little bit different than World's Toughest is for us because it's tied directly into a Tough Mudder weekend event. So there was a lot of learnings there for us, but from an experience side and a product side, it's been a lot of fun and really successful. So we're all happy about it.
Toughest LA was the first Toughest Mudder. For being the first one, how do you think it went?
Toughest LA was, we learned a lot, but it was a really amazing event. For the first time we had ever done this format, the event itself was really smooth. A lot of the things that we, had concerns about or were unsure about, we, were proved unfounded. So the things like the two different loops and having those operate at separate times of the event went off pretty much without a hitch. And the competition we saw come out was just insane. So seeing Ryan just blow our expectations of what was possible out of the water on that first event was huge and, really exciting in a lot of ways. So overall, it was a solid event for us and a really great way to start the season.
Is it a challenge to design courses that are going to challenge Ryan, but that are also doable for regular people?
I'd say so. It's hard because you don't know with a guy like that. You'd like to think maybe he can't take the hills, or maybe he can't take the speed, or maybe we'll throw a bit more on the upper body out there. But he seems to kind of win on all fronts. So if you know of any weaknesses, we're all ears.
Nolan, you actually said at one of the podiums that Ryan keeps beating you by getting 50 miles at the events.
Yeah, it's a personal challenge. I don't know if the athletes ever think of it like that, but for us, we lay out a course and we're really laying out a challenge that we want to see people hit. Obviously, we want to make it difficult, but somehow we keep setting marks. We don't use Ryan's name specifically, but we'll say, we want to, whoever is the top athlete, this is what we think they can potentially achieve if they do it perfectly. More often than not, nobody achieves that, but for the past few years, he's definitely proved us wrong.
You mentioned the two loops in LA. In Europe and Philly, you guys switched to a one-loop format for the race. What is the thought process behind that?
There are a lot of reasons behind that. So a lot of people out there probably think that we saw Ryan and John hit 50 miles and just wanted to make it harder. Which, I'm not going to say is not entirely true, but it certainly plays into it. But really, it was for, one, the satisfaction of the general participant out there. So we received a lot of feedback after the first few events that people would like to see a heftier cadence of obstacles, so see some more obstacles per mile. We have a lot of people out there used to the World's Toughest Mudder style course. Even surprisingly had when we asked Ryan and Lindsay after the first event, what just for their general feedback, they said it wouldn't hurt to have a few more obstacles out there on each lap. So, basically Ryan's getting what he asked for at this point, along with everyone else. It's part, we just want to make the product the best it can be, which for us means putting more of our most challenging and biggest feature obstacles out on each lap. It's also it's a venue dependent decision as well. Some venues like LA, the only way to get all the feature obstacles in is actually to run two different loops to be able to hit them both. If you tried to hit everything on that course, you'd have to run a single loop course that was somewhere near 8 miles, and that's just not in the format that we have designed. So who knows? It may make a sneak comeback at different parts of the season or next year. But yeah, for now, we'll keep it on whatever we think makes the best design possible for that venue.
Toughest Mudder Atlanta was notorious for its Mud Mile 2.0. Was it intended to be that difficult, or was that a happy accident?
Mud Mile itself is a really difficult obstacle, and it ends up changing slightly due to, the soil composition in each place that we go. So we do vary things slightly from venue to venue for toughest specifically. So people, like you said, remember certain things about each venue and about each event. But we didn't alter that one specifically for toughest to screw everyone over, but it was certainly fortunate.
Europe and Philly both had much bigger fields than the first two races. How did that affect the race?
I don't know what Eli thinks, but from my end watching it, there's a few different factors at play. One, a lot more people means a lot more wear and tear on the course. So I think when you get a smaller field like you had in LA, the course route itself, the obstacles generally stay fresher. So I think people will move through it quicker. So on that front, it makes it easier. I also think that there's a lot more people on course at any given time. So your time alone at an obstacle is shorter. And I think that means two things. One, you'll probably have a lot more support when you actually hit that obstacle. But two, you're much more likely to stay at that obstacle to help other people up. So I'm kind of split on what it does to the field. I think overall, the larger the field, I think we've seen less miles completed. So I'm tending to think that people spend a lot more time on course helping each other at obstacles is probably a big cause. And then the general wear and tear. Things get muddier, they get wetter, people are failing more often. So I think that just comes with the territory with a larger event size.
You mentioned helping people at the obstacles. At Stage 5 Klinger in Philly, there was a volunteer instructing the runners that they could not help each other on the obstacle. Was that a rule change or maybe just a misunderstanding on the volunteer's part?
No, that's an unfortunate misunderstanding. And while we love, certain obstacles must complete and have certain rules about them, Stage 5 Klinger and, many of the other obstacles out there, we absolutely encourage teamwork. That's just, being an overnight event with a lot of staff to brief in a short amount of time. That is, just a unfortunate misunderstanding. So for everyone out there, feel free and please do help each other at Stage 5 Klinger at upcoming events, and we'll try to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Philly had the least amount of people complete 25 miles of all the toughest so far. It was also the first toughest where the winning male didn't reach 50 miles. Was Philly too hard?
Heck no. I've got a thought on it too, and maybe Trevor won't like this, Trevor Cichosz. But from the first few events that I watched and watching how Ryan and John kind of led the field, I think they kind of set the pace early on, and it really depends on kind of where that falls at. And it trickles down from whoever's in second place is chasing first place, who's ever in third place is chasing second, and so on and so forth. So to me, it's really about that pace setting and where people line out. And you can see it in the individual categories too, like in the UK, not having a strong pace setter in the field. Certainly won it and did it very well, but you see the overall miles drop. So I think it has to do with the level of competition where people see they're on the course. I think when Ryan's out on course and they see him already hit 25 miles pretty early on, kind of lights a fire under everybody else who's on site and brings the overall mileage up. But that's just a theory. So we'll see how that plays out.
Over the 4 toughest races so far, there are 885 contenders. Are you worried about having too many contenders at World's Toughest in November?
No, that was the design of this category. And we know World's Toughest is going to get a lot of extra attention this year due to the airing on CBS and CBS Sports. But what we want to do with the category is maintain the core group of athletes that have been coming back to World's Toughest year on year. They know how to run the course. They know how to get qualified. This is really for them. That group is quite large, so we wanted to keep it set for them. And for the people who may be worried about how that field will set, it's going to feel like where they were at last year. And there's going to be some new additions that maybe people are not thinking about, but those are the crew that really should come into World's Toughest under the open category. So we're going to build out that contender category to really fit what the legacy of World's Toughest is from past years.
Has CBS announced when they're going to air the toughest races?
They haven't yet. Sorry, this is Jody chiming in, but we'll announce that soon.
For the upcoming races for toughest, Canada's toughest mudder will be at Whistler Olympic Park, basically on a ski hill or a mountain. How do you think the hills will compare to toughest LA?
So I don't want to downplay the difficulty of the Whistler course, but Speaking of downhill, sorry. So the Whistler course, actually, it's at Whistler Olympic Park, and the elevation there is actually going to be less overall per lap than you get at LA. LA is likely going to be the hilliest course of the year, the most elevation gain per lap. However, Whistler does have it's got some unique parts of it that you're kind of able to make up for, that change in altitude there. So while Whistler is a little bit less hilly than LA, it will have a few things that take it to the same level of difficulty.
What Eli's saying is you can make up about 450 feet in the span of 200 yards in certain places. Which will be interesting on that course. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a sneaky elevation gain that people aren't expecting there. I think it's a low, constant rise, and you do gain a lot of elevation, but over a long period. So I think it's going to play out differently than the quick up and down that we had in LA. So
less severe hills for the most part.
And it gets crispy cold at night up there. Mm-hmm. A humid, cold, kind of dreary. So it'll be fun.
Toughest Chicago is going to be at Rockford International Airport, and that looks like it's going to be the flattest of the 6 races. Will this be similar to Atlanta with increased obstacle difficulty to make up for the lack of elevation?
There'll be exaggerated features on site to make up for the lack of elevation. We balance it out as best we can, and it's a lot of fun to do it.
Yeah, a lot of people noticed the placement of Arctic Enema conveniently 1/8 of a mile before Funky Monkey in Philadelphia. Expect things like that to continue or be even more enhanced at Chicago, where we need to make up for that terrain difficulty with obstacle placement.
For 2018, have you guys thought about how many toughest races you're going to hold?
We have. There's no exact number right now, but we're working out the calendar and schedule for next year, hopefully to include more of Europe and balance out the location of the North American venue so more people can have access to it, or we'll at least have one in their region.
For World's Toughest, most of us are still thinking about the toughest mutters, but you guys have to be deep in the planning for that already. Is there anything new you want to tease about World's Toughest 2017?
Nope, absolutely not.
What's the maximum number of applications before World's Toughest is sold out?
We haven't published that number yet, so I'm not going to say.
Anything else you want to talk about or pass along to the community?
There's still a few more events in the season left. We've got Chicago and we've got Whistler. Those will be the last 2 that you can hit before we go into World's Toughest. I think expect a lot of the elite athletes to be at either one of those events. So if there's anybody who's on the fence of whether they want to come out, I think both those are going to be really exciting. And there'll be a lot of competition. And we've learned a lot through the first 4, so expect those 2 to be the most exciting. So if you're out there and you want to come run it, come check it out. Also, if anybody who's thinking about World's Toughest who wants to get involved, those are a good place to kind of test the waters and get a little taste of what will be at World's Toughest. I think what we've done so far with some of the features at Toughest this year, you'll see hopefully an enhanced version at World's Toughest, if not a very enhanced version at World's Toughest. So it's going to be an exciting year. And we've got a lot of our team focused on this series, which means it'll all come back to World's Toughest being a pretty spectacular event this year. So we're excited. Obviously, Eli and I have been talking a lot about World's Toughest so far, so hopefully we'll roll out something pretty difficult this year.
Nolan Kombol, Eli Hutchison. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Yeah, thank you. I'll see you out there.
All right.
Special thanks to Sandy Rhee, Trevor Cichosz, Eli Hutchison, and Nolan Kombol for being guests on this week's episode. Thanks a lot, you guys. Next week, Keith Allen is my guest. He is the mind behind such Tough Mudder classics as this.
The toughest mudder curve, world's toughest. Yeah, how much tough could a tougher mudder tough if a toughest mudder could, world's toughest? How much tough could a tougher mudder tough if the toughest mudder could win world's toughest? How much tough could a tougher mudder tough if the toughest mudder could world's toughest?